So if you feel stuck in your business, you're spinning your wheels, trying harder, you're working longer, but you still don't feel like you can gain traction and move forward, this video is for you. Because the problem probably isn't your discipline, may not be your habits, it's probably something deeper. And until you address that, no amount of discipline or work or effort is really going to help. So in the next few minutes, I want to show you what's really keeping high performers or at least high efforters stuck and how to break free from that. So I meet owners all of the time or leaders of companies all of the time that are just grinding away. They're putting in long hours. They're working in the nights. They're working in the weekends. They're often proud of this. They'll talk about their 60-hour, 80-hour, even 100-hour weeks. People are proud of that. And there is something to be proud of in terms of being able to push yourself that hard. It's not much of a life, though, unless that's really all that you want. What I'd like to encourage people is, are they even open to the idea that possibly they can achieve even more than what they're accomplishing right now, but doing far less work? And if that fits you, then I want to encourage you to pay attention. It's tough for a lot of people to believe that this is possible, but it's what I've experienced in my own life, and it's what my clients routinely experience. And so I want to share some very high level, these are like 90,000 foot level concepts or principles that are important for helping unlock where you're at. I don't know your specific situation, but these principles, if you take them seriously and you pay attention to them, they'll start to open some doors for you that will make your life much easier, much better, and ideally, hopefully, more successful. So the first one that I want to encourage you to think about, the first concept, if you want to get out of being stuck and you want to get to someplace different, is to look at your identity. This is huge, and it's a very squishy kind of concept. But let's say you run a small company and you bust your butt. You're putting in 80 hours a week, you're working on the weekends, you kind of humble brag that you work through your vacations, all of that kind of stuff. What's probably happened is you've built an identity around this rise and grind type persona, or whatever it is. I would say many of the leaders that I work with have self-images or perspectives that include a scarcity mentality, this idea of always having to struggle. There was a client that I worked with that had as a mascot, was a starving coyote. That was really, it was a drawing that somebody had made, and it was this bony coyote with ribs and the whole thing. And the idea was it just got out there and fought for scraps, and it was just hard, and it was surviving, and it was making it work. This company now is very successful. But what's interesting is because they still maintain this identity of you got to fight for everything you've got and someone's always trying to take it from you, that same mentality has worked its way into the way that they lead now. And it's having a negative effect. So where initially it helped them survive, once they're in this place of being able to thrive and really own their space in the market, it's really working against them because they have an identity that doesn't match their current reality and it doesn't match their potential. And so you want to think about your identity in that way. I find that most of the clients that I work with, a picture that I draw oftentimes, there's this idea, this hockey stick idea of success. Like we'll just keep going along and we'll grow a little bit, and then we'll start taking off. And real success never looks that way. Real success always looks like this stairway where and maybe these stairs kind of move up a little bit and then move up a little bit like that. You get growth, and then you get stuck. And what feels like a wall or an inability to move forward is in fact a step that you need to go up. And this step is a significant change. All the little incremental grow 5% a year stuff is right here. You can only go so far doing that, not that far. Then eventually you hit a spot where the only way to grow past where you're at is to really make some significant changes. One of those changes, and this is a spooky one, and that's why very few companies make that jump, is a change in identity. It doesn't mean you have to rebrand yourself, although sometimes that happens. But it does mean that you have to begin as a leader to think about your role in a different way. So a classic example of this is if you're running a very small company, let's say it's a little tiny construction company, and it's just you and your helper, and you're doing the work. And so you see yourself as this master craftsman. If you want to get beyond that, you have to begin to see yourself as someone who can run jobs and have a couple of crews. And you have to see yourself differently, not as the person who does the work, but as the person who hires good people, gets the work, and can bring that out, delegate that out to people and guide those projects. Then if you want to grow past that, you have to begin to separate yourself again by another level of management, by foreman or whoever, whatever you want to call them. And you begin to see yourself as a leader of managers. And you're starting to separate even more from the craftsman mentality. And as you grow in companies, you grow that company up to $10 million, $20 million, $100 million. There's these jumps that you take. You don't have to sacrifice who you are in that, but your identity needs to evolve and it needs to grow. And you need to begin to see yourself not just as a craftsman, but as a leader of people, as an architect of systems and culture, and so on. And if you can make those jumps, then your business will start to take off. But you do not see successful businesses that are large and growing well and are healthy and are sustainable, where the identity of the senior leadership still functions and thinks as if they were running a tiny mom and pop. You have to begin to think differently and see differently. It's very high level. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about how you shift that identity right now or right in this video. But this is something I want you to think about is, if I want to, let's say I'm running a $10 million company right now, and someday I'd like to run a $50 million company. What needs to change about how I see myself so that I can carry this load and feel like it's graceful? Because I walk people through this process all of the time, I can tell you for a fact, they're the same people that were here from here, but in terms of their maturity, their emotional growth, the trajectory that they need to go through, even if it's only, let's say, a 3-year time frame from 10 million to 50 million, the path that they have to go through in terms of kind of growing up in their sense of who they are is dramatic. If they fight that, which some do, then they stay stuck. They don't get past it. And I haven't seen an exception to that. Also, what happens is they may have a year, like I'll see companies that'll have this year where they'll have a high growth year and then come back down again. This high growth year is usually an anomalous year. Usually what happens is they're able to make things work. They got in a bunch of work for that year, but their identity is right in this space right here. And so when they have this anomalous year, it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel like them. And so what they do is they pull themselves back down to what does feel comfortable, and they begin to act in ways. It's the same thing if they were to have an off year, they'd pull themselves back up and they would stay in this space. Some people call this the thermostat effect. It's like we all have a setting in terms of our perspective of where we should be at in life, whatever this is, our identity, our success, the complexity we can handle, the money we can make, the quality of the relationships we can have. In any of those areas, we have this sort of set point that we've built around that. If you want to grow past that, you have to change your identity. You have to change your thermostat. Otherwise, you'll keep coming back to that set point. One of the best ways to, I do want to give you a tip for that. One of the best ways to shift your identity is to begin to, let's go back to the 10 million to 50 million. So at this level, you probably have some direct management and you've got your teams of people, your frontline folks. Over here, you're probably going to have a couple of different levels of management. You're probably not going to be, here you might still be involved in doing some of the work or showing up to supervise it. Over here, you're probably not doing any of that, or you shouldn't be. Over here, if you want to sustain it. If you want to grow, this is just using financial goals. If you want to grow from 10 million to 50 million in revenue, to make that jump, I encourage spend time around people who are at this level. Get to know how they function, get to know how they think, read books that have been written by people that have built companies like this, hire coaches, hire mentor, or connect with mentors who are working at this level. Just kind of marinate yourself in how they think. And what you'll find is that it's not like they're different human beings, but they do approach things in a different way. They approach problems and solutions in a different way. They see opportunities and challenges in a different way. They relate to resources in a different way and relationships in a different way. And you want to let that impact you because the way, basically just the way people are wired and built is we tend to mimic the people that we're around. And so let that happen to you. Be around these kinds of folks and immerse yourself in that place. In my experience, I mean, unless you're working with direct competitors, but even then sometimes, in my experience, most people, there's often an openness from people who've built some level of success. There's often a willingness to reach down and help other people move up. That's been my experience. It's not always the case, but many times I've been surprised at how often I can go to someone who I see as being ahead of where I'm at, someplace that I want to get to, and I've been able to go to them, this is over decades, and just talk to them and say, how do I get to where you're at right now? What are some tips that I need to know? So I encourage that you do those kinds of things. So if you are starting to realize that success isn't just about doing more or working harder, but doing what actually produces results, you're already ahead of most. And if you want more content that helps you grow with clarity and not with burnout, then hit subscribe. I've got a lot more coming that breaks the surface on how to do all of this and help you get to the real leverage points so that you can take off. The second one is focus. This is huge. When I work with clients that are trying to grow, let's say from 10 million a year to 50 million a year, they often struggle with focus. They have either no goal at all, no clear sense of where they want to get to, or they've got 18 top priorities that they want to pursue, but there's no clear specific goal. The more clarity that you have and the more focus that you have, the easier it'll be and the faster it'll be for you to grow and for you to overcome challenges and for you to get to where you're going. Just because you're able to put all of your energy and your attention in one spot as opposed to letting it be diffused all over the place. And so a couple of tools that I use to help maintain focus is I encourage, and you'll hear me talk about this in a lot of my content, I encourage that you define your values, your vision, and your priorities. So your values are how you make decisions and what kind of behavior is expected. They define the decision making and the behaviors. And so you want to be clear on those 3 to 5 core values, not everything you value under the planet or in the planet, but just the top 3, 4, 5 values that define these are how decisions should be made within our organization, and this should inform behavioral choices, how you relate to each other within the organization. Your vision is what you're trying to build, what you're trying to get to ultimately. And it might be 3 years out, it might be 5 years out, it might be 1 year out if you've not done this before. There's some organizations that still do 10 and 20 year strategic planning. That's become rarer and rarer just because the world has become more turbulent and it's harder to plan that far in advance. But wherever your vision is, this is a sense of direction, and this is how you want to relate to get to this direction. Priorities are shorter-term objectives that you need to accomplish to achieve your vision. If you know what your values, your vision, and your priorities are, then the decisions that you need to make on a daily or weekly basis become much simpler. Do they help you accomplish your priority? Yes or no? If the answer is no, probably shouldn't be doing it. If the answer is yes, all right. Does it help us accomplish our vision? If it helps you accomplish a priority, your priority should be tied to your vision. The answer should be yes. Is it in alignment with your values? Does it help you manifest or bring to life one of your values? If the answer is yes, there's a better chance that this is a good or at least acceptable decision. If it compromises or conflicts with a value, it's probably a wrong decision. If it doesn't have any bearing on your values at all, at least discuss it and talk about it. Is there a way that you can pursue your priorities and your values or your priorities and your vision, that would be more in alignment with your values. The more alignment you have here, the clearer your focus is. Now here's the cool thing around this is as you're growing your company out, if you take these things here and your whole management team and all of your staff have clarity about their priorities as you pursue vision together and you all practice these values together, management becomes a lot easier because everybody has the same playbook. Everybody understands this is how we make decisions together. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is what we need to focus on today. It simplifies life dramatically. And so I recommend that as a strategy for helping create focus. The second thing on here, whoops, spell that better. I don't try to spell it right. I just try to spell it better. And if I can't do either, I just write a little messier. All right, so success, defining success. One of the things that you want to make sure that you've done, and this could be just for yourself personally, or it could be for the whole organization, but write out your definition of what success is. This is a notoriously slippery concept. The reason you want to define success is that if you don't define what success means for you, those goalposts will always get up and move. And so it doesn't matter how great of a year or how great of a decade you had and how much success you accomplished, you will never feel like you arrived, because if you haven't defined this in a way that's measurable, it will keep moving in front of you. And so if you say, I just want to go from a $10 million company to a 50 million, okay, that's a definition, that's measurable, but I would ask, why? What does $50 million mean to you? What does it make possible that 40 million or 60 million wouldn't be better at? Why 50 million? What's going on at that point? What does that number symbolize to you? And I would talk about that. If this is purely a vanity number, if that number just feels big enough where now I'm an important person, I would think about, all right, what does that say about the last thing we talked about, identity? And is that the right place for you to anchor your identity? Is that what you want? Maybe it is. But you need to decide. I would encourage that you decide that for yourself, because if it is, when you get to 50, you're going to realize, oh, there's 100. I need to be pursuing that. And then you start to see you never get to an end. There's always something you have to chase. And so you can't find, contentment becomes elusive. And then that leads to burnout and all sorts of other things that you've seen happen around you with other people, or maybe experienced yourself. But I would spend some time defining what success means like to you. And this can include financial, but it should also include, things like with family. What do you want to accomplish with your family, with your, physical health, maybe spiritual health, maybe social health, generosity or giving, how you want to contribute. Maybe that's the word you want to use, contribution. There may be other categories on here, but I would think through, what does success look like to me in these categories? And that's at least a way that you can think through, how will I know that I'm getting close to it and maybe have achieved it? Focus is having a clear definition of success, and then the values, vision, and priorities for the organization. The last principle that I want to introduce to you, if you're feeling stuck, is simplicity. So as there's a tendency, as people are growing organizations, trying to get unstuck or actually pursuing growth, to keep layering complexity and make things more and more involved and harder to do. And what I encourage is that you should try to, each growth step that you go up, try to make that an evolution in simplicity, making things easier, making things more repeatable with less effort. So part of the simplicity comes from what I talked about previously with focus. If you're clear about your definition of success, your values, your vision, and your priorities, That simplifies decision making. So you want to simplify your decision making, because one of the things that is most fatiguing to leaders is decision fatigue, having to constantly make decisions. Your ability to effectively make decisions is kind of like a muscle, and it exhausts itself over the course of a day. You can only make really so many good decisions. Just like if you picked up a barbell, you can only lift it so many times before you max out. You can't lift it again. It's the same thing with decision making. You probably all know around what time of day your brain goes to mush and you're not making the best decisions anymore. If you can simplify your decision making process, you can make better decisions than you were able to before. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is I want to encourage that you put in structures and systems. You might call these a playbook. This might be a policy and procedure manual, P&P manual. This might be, SOPs, standard operating procedures, whatever you want to call it. I would encourage that you build these out. This might even have to do with software. I would encourage that you build these kinds of things out so that it's just easier to do the right thing and it's easier to get to the right answer. I have a client that I was talking with yesterday, and they grew from 6 to 16 million over a year. They just jumped. And so we've been working a lot on building the structures and systems in that organization, because they had achieved just really dramatic success in a very brief amount of time. But the majority owner of the company was maxed out. And so we've been working on simplifying decision making and putting these structures and systems in. And so an example of a way that they did this is they were having a hard time tracking their sales. And so they have a sales funnel, if you're familiar with those. And there's different phases of a sales process, and they were having a hard time getting their sales team to regularly track their interactions with the client and or a prospective client, and how they're moving through the sales funnel. And so what they did is he reached out to the software developer that runs the CRM that they use. And now when you log into their system, the very first thing that pops up is the sales funnel, and you have to actually fill that out or complete it before you can get to anything else in the system. So it's the only way to get in is to follow the steps that you need to follow so that they can track their sales processes. It's a very sales heavy organization. And so that's the way he's using structure to simplify what had become a management burden of trying to get a whole team of people to comply with something that they had asked them to do. But the team always felt too busy, too rushed, too distracted, too disinterested to follow through on it. They just made it structurally impossible to do anything else unless they comply. So that's a way of using structures. Systems are just essentially writing the recipes for your business. Systems are why almost anybody, I don't want to oversimplify this, but really almost anybody can buy a McDonald's or buy some other fast food franchise. And by almost anybody, I don't mean, you need to know some things about running a business and management, but you don't have to be a chef. You don't really have to know how to cook. You just have to know how to, again, so somebody's going to listen to this and tell me I'm wrong, but you're really buying a business in a box, and it's kind of paint by numbers. Oversimplifying a bit, but it's kind of paint by numbers because they've so well developed the systems, everything from the food that you can order to how you store it, how you use it, how you prepare it, how you deliver it, how you clean things, how you hire people, how you advertise. All of it is systematized. Now compare that to the business just down the street. That's the super popular restaurant in town run by the local chef. And that chef, the owner, is there every single day, and the place can't run without that owner. Between the two of those, it's the McDonald's or whatever franchise that is easier to run and allows the owner to go off and take vacations and those things. The other super popular restaurant might be a nicer dining experience, but the experience for the owner isn't going to be the same. It's going to be a stuck experience. They can't go out easily and open 5 or 6 or 7 different restaurants. When you do see a restaurateur who is able to do that, it's because they're using structures and systems to run their restaurants. Hopefully that helps make sense. So identity, focus, and simplicity, working on those things, elevating your sense of who you are, being around people who help lift you up and encourage you and give you a bigger perspective of who you can be. Getting clearer focus on what you're trying to accomplish and how you relate along the way, your values, your vision, your priorities, and how you define success. And then simplifying decision-making and how things operate. If you push into those three areas, you will start to find yourself gain traction and break free from what's been holding you back, and it'll start to help you take off. So, if you felt stuck, don't double down on discipline or working harder. The rise and grind approach only goes so far and not that far. So I encourage you to zoom out. The real shift comes from growing or expanding your sense of identity, clarifying your focus, and simplifying the process that you use to get there. But let's say you've done this, you started to build your organization, you've gained some success, you've hired leadership. The real trick is tough leadership decisions under pressure, especially when it comes to knowing about executive leaders, whether you should retain them, someone that you may have hired. So if you've hired a CEO or any kind of senior leader and things don't seem to be working like you'd hoped, watch this video, When to Fire a CEO and When That is a Huge Mistake. It's linked right here. Click on it now and make a smarter, calmer decision when it's needed.